Hey, hello, welcome everybody. Welcome to Tech in 10 for Thursday, 1st of August, 2024. So today we're going to be touching a little bit on some practical cybersecurity basics. This is going to be a part one, and we're going to keep it nice and brief and just touch on some of the key things because cybersecurity is crucial more now than ever. It obviously can be overwhelming. We hear a lot of things happening in the media, and we hear people losing money and being impacted by those types of breaches. So we wanted to make sure we could get some essentials out. So let's get straight into it. If you've got any questions as you go, please use the Q&A button on the top, and we'll cover those off at the end. Okay, so why cybersecurity matters. I think that we've seen through a lot of things in the media, through stories of friends, that it's crucial. It protects financial data from theft, from damage, ensuring our privacy, and we want to make sure we're doing as much of that as possible. Cybersecurity is also disruptive with attacks like malware and phishing and causing disruption. Now, just recently as last week, we also had the incident where the cybersecurity vendor had an issue that caused an outage. So we're seeing that systems are so interconnected that if we have unexpected incidents that happen, they're going to lead to impact, whether it's missing a flight, not being able to take money out of the bank. Cybersecurity attacks can mean very different things to different people. So obviously, we want to make sure that we're preventing cyber attacks as best as possible, but also maintaining integrity. So it's critical that records in our healthcare system, financial networks, they're all secure, and that their integrity is set so that the information is accurate. It's not been changed. It's not been breached in any way. For economic and political stability, there's instances of infrastructure being a target, so power grids, electrical systems. Obviously, in order to use these systems, we need to protect them as well. So there is a wide umbrella of things, but usually it's a lot behind the scenes. So let's get into a little bit of what we should do. So from a personal perspective, or even from a business in personal perspective, we should definitely be taking steps to strengthen your cybersecurity defense. So have as many of these layers in as possible, but let's start off with passwords. Now, this has been spoken about so much, but having a strong password is your first line of defense. So making sure that you have a mix of uppercase, lowercase, letters, numbers, special characters is important, but it's really difficult to manage that. And obviously, the one in the example here, it ticks all the boxes, but it's probably not going to be a good password because it could be guessed. Part of it can be guessed. So all these things are necessary, but it's how you use them. So they're not easy to remember though. So using a password manager makes life a lot easier. Keeping all your data in a password manager can make that process a lot easier. You should be using these passwords, these strong passwords, uniquely for each application you use. It's not going to be a case of if a breach happens, it's when with most companies. So if you use LinkedIn and use a password that you use everywhere else and they've been breached, as one example, that password can then be tried with your email address combo, which is public knowledge, with the password from the breach across any application that you're registered for programmatically by hackers. So that's why it's important to use unique passwords as well, and to use a password manager to keep track of them all. So ideally, you have a password manager, one strong password you can remember, and that's your access to your unique password per app. That means if somebody gets breached, you reset that password, you don't have to reset anymore. So you're saving yourself a lot of time. Enabling two-factor authentication. If you don't have two-factor now, you're using an application or a system that doesn't have it, that is an issue. Now, two-factor adds an extra layer of security, sometimes called multi-factor. It adds another layer of security so that if somebody gets your password, they might not be able to get in without that second factor, whether it be a phone or a token, as I just grab one here from my bag as an example, is becoming more popular, like these hardware tokens. I'm not sure if it's blurred out, but these are becoming more popular because they're passwordless and phishing resistant. Nobody likes passwords, and phishing is the leading cause of about 92% of attacks. So having good multi-factor is important. And if we step back and think about what IT used to be like in, say, 20 years ago or 18 years ago when I started, we used to not really work remotely. It never used to really be a big thing that we used to support. So you used to have to be in one of the offices, and the offices were interconnected. That physical security of being in an office was a factor. It is a factor. Now, with having systems being accessible anywhere, we need to make sure that we've got those additional factors beyond just username and password. So if you were working around that back in the early 2000s or before, you will obviously be aware of that, but multi-factor should be a pay to play now. So step two is stay updated and backed up. So staying updated is important because the vendors are being more responsible now with the software as a service model for releasing updates frequently. So when they're releasing updates, there's generally a reason. They're not releasing updates for the fun of it. They're not putting their time and effort into it. There is a good reason. So it is worthwhile doing that as often as possible to make sure your operating systems, your applications are all updated. And if possible, for them to update automatically. Now, Windows is a bit of a pain point because it always seems to update when you least want it to, but you need to, when you see that little orange bubble and the two arrows, you just need to click on that and try to get it rebooted as quickly as possible. So that gets it out of the way. It makes your machine run quicker once the update's been loaded. So try to keep regularly doing that. Obviously, having an endpoint security or antivirus software, most of them aren't delivered that way now. The ones that are delivered there, the ones that are an impact there are the things that are just basic pay-to-play type things. So just because they're not as common nowadays is because of the software that's installed. So we can't skip there. That can be pretty straightforward though. So that's important. And if all else fails, having a regular backup of data. So they can happen. Things can happen with cyber attacks, hardware failures, other disasters. Accidental deletions is probably the most common restore requests we see. Having a backup is the last line of defense. So it is really critical to have that in place. So with that, we will go to the Q&A, and hopefully that was valuable. And let's just have a look and see if we've got any questions that have come through. Okay, we've got one that's come through here. So what are the easiest ways to improve password security? So strong password that is not anything related to you, that's unique for the application or service you're using, and try to enable two-factor. If you use a good password manager with a strong password that you can remember, you don't have to write down, you don't have to store it anywhere, that has good two-factor. Again, you can use hardware tokens like these that are phishing resistant, or your mobile phone. Your password experience will get a lot better because when you go to the website, it'll just autofill, and it's so much quicker than having to go to an Excel document for copy and paste. And it makes it faster than even if you had to type in the password that you use across all accounts. So it makes sense to look at that and to eradicate the reusing of passwords. There's no real excuse for doing that anymore when the password manager is in play. How frequently should I back up your data? So when it comes to backup, there's a couple of different things to consider. I think when you're working on documents, generally you want to sync any of the changes as they happen, which is quite common with applications in the Microsoft stack. So OneDrive and SharePoint is essentially live to the keystroke. So that is quite handy, and you've got revisions. But I think once you've got that out of the way, you're really probably looking at a daily backup is probably suitable. So something that is disconnected from your primary storage, there's an air gap, as they say. So there's no way for what's happening in your primary system to touch across to your backup. So they need to be completely separate. Only admins have access, and that just keeps it away from from everybody that doesn't need to have access to it to maintain its integrity. And the last one we got here is what might be some common signs that we're experiencing a cyber attack. Look, the most common ones that we see are at the moment is around phishing emails. So emails of people that they're either not getting emails from people, they're being redirected to a folder, they're getting bounce backs or forwards. So there's a few things like that. Pop-ups on your screen and a bit of unexpected or slow performance is another indicator. There really is a lot of different ways. Unauthorized transactions or new applications that you're not expecting are also quite common. So those are some of the more common ones and more visual ones that you'll see. So it's always important to just ask somebody else to have a look at it if you're not sure. So, and with that, I think we've covered off all the questions. Thank you for joining us. Please check out the website for some of our other webinars. We'll be back next week for part 2. So please do try and join us for that. We'll see you then.